cards at all to the public, and I haven't yet. So that promise I'm making due, and I have been advocating for a new hospital for many, many years. In 1973, I made the first approach to Secretary at that time of Veterans Affairs, Tony Principi, and I told Tony Principi, and I knew him on a personal basis, I said, you got to come down from the Winter Sports Clinic at Snowmass and see us down here and see what's going on about a new hospital in Denver. At that time, in the 90s, the Fitzsimmons Army Hospital was closing, and the entire reservation, the golf course, every bit of land that those hospital facilities sit on was offered to the Veterans Administration for $1, and the VA turned it down. In the words Beth Thoren said at that time, I don't want to put up with the bullshit.
No.
Had they taken it at that time, we would have owned the property. Sold it to Anschutz, sold it to Children's Hospital and all the medical and educational facilities that goes with the University of Colorado. We'd have built a 250-bed hospital with all 6 units, including post-traumatic stress disorder and the nursing home that was originally part of the game plan of the new facility. We would have paid for that and had money in the bank. And as it turned out, they turned it out. I remember Tony Principi leaning across the table at a meeting that we had at the University Hospital and telling myself and Tommy Wheaton, who is now the treasurer for the National Paralyzed Veterans of America, and telling us we are going to have that 200 and some odd bed hospital and a 50-unit SCI spinal cord injured unit. As it turned out, we have 128 some odd beds and a 30-bed SCI unit and a price tag of $1.7 billion. Now, that's the educational part that should make every taxpayer pissed off. Mr. Coffman knew all of this information. Never once has anybody ever announced the fact that the VA was offered that entire facility a reservation for $1. Why? Moving right along, many years of concentration by disabled vets and vets that needed medical care and attention. Never once has the United Veterans Committee of Colorado or any veterans in my position ever complained about the service. It was always the process. Why did it take a year to hire a nurse or a doctor or a clinician or a physician or a psychologist? And that's the process. Never once did many of our veterans in this highly 500,000 populated state of veterans. We stood there with honor, and we got together. We tried to make recommendation of what we thought the facility was to handle what we needed. So we started putting ideas together, and that's where Jason Crow came in the picture. I've seen pictures of Congressman Coffman on a tank. I've never seen it in action or heard any of his war stories. I sat down for 5 minutes 12 years ago, or a number of years ago, with Jason Crow, and he was a brother ranger, a commander. He led 3 tours into Afghanistan, so I know that what he's talking about when he says combat, he knows what he's talking about, and I would follow Jason Crow into any battle as opposed to not knowing what Congressman Coffman has done to serve his country. Congressman Coffman, take that ridiculous ad out of the paper that describes candidate Crow as a human being. He has done more for veterans in a few years than you've done for all of the years you've been.
Yes. Yes.
I'm speaking harshly because that's how I feel. I feel terrible now that we have 2 entities of our new facility that are not there. But I'm more concerned about the candidate, Jason Crow. I've worked with him. Bernie mentioned the white paper. There were dozens and dozens of us veterans that put that white paper together. I personally met with Congressman Coffman on his last election, and I said, before you go back, take the white paper with you. And I said, have you used these ideas that we veterans put together, and had he implemented it and used his power as a congressman to represent the veterans of Colorado, he could have built that hospital $1 billion cheaper than what it's cost us now, and it's not complete. Congressman Coffman, take that damn ad out of the paper and use a little bit of pride and respect Jason Crow as a congressman candidate.
Yes.
Can we have another hand for Artie Guerrero, please?
Yes.
You know, I hope in the Smithsonian Institute they will publish the picture of Congressman Coffman bowing out the back door of a rally that he arranged for his constituents because he couldn't face them and answer their questions. That's the character of Congressman Coffman. He may be a good man, he may be a God-fearing man, as we all are, but reality is reality. We need to serve our constituents, we need to serve our veterans, and beyond that, we need to be honest. The truth and the lack of the truth has become a norm. When somebody is dishonest to you and lies to you, that's called intellectual thievery. They're attacking your mind, your body, and the things we learned that our parents taught us as little kids. And we have had to come to accept that every day we're going to hear either Donald Trump or Congressman Coffman put an email that is only partly true. I am still trying to find out the unit brigade that Congressman Coffman fought in. I want to know how many men he led into combat. He talks about it before he speaks at any gathering. Jason Crow can talk about it because he did it. That's the reality factor, because he did it. And those of us who served in the military, like Marvin and me, we know, and we never talk about what we did. I don't talk about the 23 guys who are my close friends who got blown apart. None of our military folks who witnessed the worst of hell talk about it. But Mike Coffman talks about it every time he sees an opportunity for votes and money. That's unconscionable. That's unconscionable. I want to let you hear from a really fantastic servant of the veteran, Marvin L. Myers, excuse me, Marvin. Could you help me get this over there?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marvin Myers. Artie, you did a good job there. And Artie, you set the scene very well. Artie and I have worked together for many years when he was the state president of the Paralyzed Veterans of America here in Denver, and I was the executive director, and we had a good show, didn't we? And there's, okay. What am I looking at?
He's unplugged you for a second. They're trying to get the connection, sir.
That's what we need, good connection.
Yes, we did.
Now have a tuna sandwich and start over.
Right. Not working. Oh,
You okay? Where did it cut out? The whole thing cut out?
just about. Can you hold it closer to your mouth and see if it'll...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm Marvin Myers, and I work closely with Bernie Rogoff, who does a marvelous job. Artie Guerrero over the years.
Yeah.
When Artie was the state president for the Paralyzed Veterans, I worked with him as the executive director for the Paralyzed Veterans for 5 states, and we accomplished quite a bit. And over the years, we've had the privilege of working with many fine people who have been very supportive of veterans. And I will tell you that Jason Crow, when he first appeared on the scene, he became an associate at the law offices where he is presently involved, and that's when we got a chance to talk about veterans' needs and circumstances. And Jason was very receptive, and he said that he would do everything he could, and as a veteran, he lived up to that. And we're very proud of the relationship that we've had with Jason. He's done a marvelous job. And then I will tell you that Artie has worked tirelessly throughout the state of Colorado and throughout the nation in behalf of veterans, and his accomplishments are very well known. And I will tell you also that it's been a privilege to work with our fellow veterans, the men and the women, because they have been very receptive and very supportive, and so we want to continue doing that kind of thing. So thank you all for being here today. It's good to see you here. And Arthur, am I leaving anything out?
No, it's just money. You got to pay me.
I'll pay you later, Arthur. All right, but thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Grassroots campaign, they can't afford this fancy.
the mic isn't working anyway, right? So,
Don't put that in the stories.
do we need to just put it
Yeah, I
down?
mean, it's not even
It's not even working now.
While there's a pause, I'd like to just say a couple things. I served in Vietnam as a Marine infantry officer, so that's my bona fides. When I'm walking and talking to people, I tell them that I did serve in Vietnam, but I didn't come back with a Bronze Star. You don't get a Bronze Star for showing up and putting the uniform on. It's really important to counter these kinds of ads with person-to-person talk. I make phone calls for Jason once a week, but I canvass every Saturday. I end up talking to 4 or 5 times as many people canvassing as I do on the phone. So everybody here who's able to get out, climb steps, and knock on doors needs to do it. It's the only way we're going to counter the big money that puts on those ridiculous ads.
Yes.
It's Mitch Christmas. Hey, one more real important question, and it really bothers me as a combat veteran. I'm the recipient of the Silver Star for my last incident when I got shot, and it really disgusts me. It disgusts me to see the type of ad that came out on that newspaper, and knowing that Congressman Coffman has endorsed the administration 96% of the time. It's ridiculous. We are not together. And many of us, many of the 1.5 million people that have paid that ultimate price to keep our country free, and the thousands and the 100,000s of us that paid half that ultimate price, we give a damn.
Yes.
We don't care whether the war was popular or not. We went when our country called us, and we went, and I like Senator McCain's statement. I went because I love this country and I love the state of Colorado, and I will do everything to convince everybody that can hear my voice is to write and call those people and let them know, get that ad out of the damn paper.
Yes.
It's just not fair to any of us that paid that price.
Right. Thank you.
My name's Travis Weiner. I'm a veteran of the Iraq War, where I did 2 combat tours with the 101st Airborne. And after leaving the military and graduating from college, I worked in the veterans mental health care field in Boston. Recently, I graduated from Jason's alma mater, Colorado Law. While I was there, I was part of a coalition of military veterans and others who helped write and testify in support of what is now law in the state of Colorado. And that is a law that mandates that each college and university has to have a system in place to give college credit for military service. I also, this past session, was involved in an effort, again passed into law, to give our wartime allies the military interpreters in-state tuition in Colorado. So finally, I worked with other fellow veterans and law students with the Boulder County District Attorneys and the Boulder County Public Defenders to work on issues of veterans in the criminal justice system and educate lawyers and judges and others about everything from how to read a military record to mental health issues of veterans to what the best practices are for them going through the system. So I'm speaking for myself today as a veterans advocate on these issues, but I've devoted a large part of my life to these issues. Primarily advocating, as I said, for our wartime allies in the Middle East and their families. My interpreter in my platoon was killed waiting for a visa to come over here, and deported veterans. So I first met Jason about 6-8 months ago regarding these two issues, support for our wartime allies and the issue of deported veterans. And I can tell you, I've been doing this stuff for a long time, and I met a lot of politicians and their staff, and I was incredibly impressed with Jason. He was genuine and honest in the meeting. He didn't, blow smoke. He was interested in both issues, and he pledged to examine them in detail and to offer his support ultimately. In fact, he did what almost no politicians do. He said, you know what, I want to learn more about these issues, send me everything you got. Then he got back to me and said, I'm all for it, and if I'm elected, I'm going to support you on it.
Nice.
Right. So it was clear to me then, I think it's clear to all of us, that Jason doesn't play politics with veterans issues and national security issues because it's beneath him as a combat veteran and because it's the wrong thing to do. So Jason's record on veterans issues speaks for itself. Hundreds and hundreds of pro bono hours given. I can relate to that. Extensive work and involvement on the state level, as our other speakers have testified to. And a misleading and despicable attack ad doesn't change that simple reality. So I've seen the ad that the Paul Ryan affiliated Super PAC has aired against Jason, and incredibly, it claims that missing some meetings of the Colorado Board of Veterans Affairs is evidence in and of itself that he neglects veterans. But as the veterans here and others can tell you, it's simply not true. What the ad is instead evidence of is how scared and desperate the GOP has become with regard to this race. Now, Jason has never questioned Coffman's concern or commitment to veterans airing some kind of similar ad. But Mike Coffman's silence on this ad and his failure to immediately disavow it is troubling, to say the least. And if Mike Coffman has any integrity, he'll demand the ad be removed and disavow it entirely for what it is. Yeah. Misleading, shameful, and despicable attempt to politicize the issue of caring for veterans for the sole reason that this race has turned out to be far closer than Coffman or his staff ever anticipated.
Right.
If Mike Coffman and his staff and their allies, the GOP, choose instead to continue to engage in the dishonorable practice of politicizing veterans' issues for personal gain or winning an election, it may be worth examining whether Coffman's support for veterans and veterans' issues is in fact unwavering, as he claims it to be, or rather whether he and his staff qualify that support by first calculating the political gain or the political loss. So for example, I myself first met with Coffman's staff over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, to advocate on the issues of our wartime allies in Iraq and Afghanistan, military interpreters and their families, and deported veterans. Since that time, through countless phone calls, emails, and meetings, in the end, I have not received one concrete answer to any of my concrete questions about these emails. Not one answer about he will or won't do, and in the end, I was simply ignored. Now, this may be because the Congressman and his staff calculated that too much public support by his office, for example, for our Iraqi interpreters or for deported veterans, some of whom are combat veterans of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Vietnam, might be too politically risky to large segments of his anti-immigrant base. So there's no way to know the real reason, but it strikes me that is probably true. And that's not truly supporting veterans or veterans issues. So treating veterans such as myself in such a way and refusing to take a principled stand on these issues demonstrates ironically that it's Mike Coffman who in the end seems to examine support for some veterans issues through a political lens first and foremost. Now, Mike Coffman has decided to co-sponsor a bill on deported veterans. His staff either doesn't know or doesn't understand immigration law. I explained to them that this bipartisan bill would in fact not allow for the repatriation of virtually any deported veterans, for it excludes almost all of the veterans convicted of the crimes for which they were deported for. But to Mike Coffman and his staff, it's more important that he put out a press release saying, look at me supporting this bipartisan deported veterans bill. Never mind what the actual bill does or doesn't do. When I explained this to them and tried really hard to get them to change the language, they're not interested. Jason Crow doesn't do that. This misleading ad, however, goes too far, and Mike Coffman must demand its removal at once or risk permanently damaging his integrity and credibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, thank you all so much for being here. That's a wrap. Really appreciate everyone's time.
I was a Navy hospital foreman with the Marine Corps in Vietnam in 1966-67. I'm leader of the Colorado Sierra Club's issue team on environmental justice and social equity, and I delivered our club's endorsement on behalf of Jason. This weekend, I have some friends pretty high up in Colorado politics. This weekend, I learned that a state Democratic senator confronted Coffman about this ad.
Nice.
And she said, will you or won't you pull an ad defaming another veteran? His response to her was, this is reality TV.
No shit.
Very Trumpian.
Yes.
Not to be surprised at, because he's voting with the Trump position more than any other Colorado congressional delegation member. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. He
Yes, sir.
not only doesn't, it's not that he's unaware of this ad, it's not that he doesn't really stand behind it because of super PAC money. He's there with it 100%. He is defaming a fellow veteran because he thinks it's going to work to his political advantage. That's shameful.
Yes.
It brings shame on him, it brings shame on his campaign,
Shame.
it brings shame on all veterans, and it needs to stop.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I have a request. May we please have all of your comments in writing so that we have facts in front of us to share with people? Everything that's been said today is so important, and we don't get that information. So if you kindly would write down what you've said and get it to Jason Crow's office and get it out to all of us, we need the facts. We don't have them. Yeah.
Especially that one right there. We need that one needs to be out. Anyone? Thank you.